plains where the prairie wind rushes. It's Carl and Vincent with field sketches. Oh yeah, they brought the drama, they brought the feels. Give it up now, this duo's the real deal. Oh yeah, they brought the drama, they brought the feels. Give it up now, this duo's the real deal. Let's go.
Oh my God.
Unbelievable.
Oh, I'm so moved.
Welcome to The Real Story with Nathaniel, guys. Everybody, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Carl Bessai, director, writer, and Vincent Gale, actor in the upcoming movie Field Sketches. It's going to be opening, I don't have the date in front of me. I do have the date in front of me, at the Toronto International Film Festival. What date is that again? Do you have, you know?
Well, we're playing in Toronto on June the 11th, which is coming up. Yeah, at the Review Cinema.
And we're going to get into that film. We're going to get into some more details. But guys, you've worked together before, and you've both worked on so much stuff. When I went to do my research on you, just mountains and mountains of stuff. What I would like to do, and what I haven't been able to find out is, like, I'm going to go back and forth at least to start off. And the first question is, Carl, who were you before you worked on your first set? Who were you as a person? Like, if you described yourself before you walked on that first set.
I mean, I was an English lit student originally, and I was a big, I did a lot of writing. I loved art. I grew up in a family of, my mom was an English professor, and I kind of saw myself heading down this road of maybe academia. I was pretty young, and I remember getting a letter from a grad school in the US, quite a great grad school, come and study English lit with us, come, and be
right.
an academic. And I panicked. I was like, oh, I'm going to be exactly like my mother. My father too was an academic. And I just thought, no, I can't do this. So I had this kind of meltdown, and then I started really scrambling around. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? A lot of my friends at the time were, young people going into, guess what, law school and med school, and I just felt like a little out of touch with what to do, and where I grew up, which is Alberta, which is where the Edmonton Oilers are from, which is why Vince and I are so excited tonight about, because it's Oiler night.
We should be honest.
Yeah.
The game's going on right now, and these two gentlemen are spending their time with us instead of watching the game that will possibly lead them to buying Stanley Cup tickets. So
yeah, but this was a city that in my day was not a big film center, so the idea of being a filmmaker as a growing up in rural Canada, I didn't think that was a thing. I didn't think that was a job. There wasn't something you could do. And then when I found out that you could actually study film and maybe look at film,
right.
What I liked about film was that it was related to literature in a way. It's about narrative, it's about story, but you didn't have to read all those Tolstoy novels, and you can watch.
I still haven't.
I loved it. I took a class. I was watching films and talking about films all day. Oh, come on. It was great. So that kind of got me going. But that sorry, I'm such a rambler, but that desire and interest in cinema has absolutely nothing to do with the nuts and bolts real world industry that you find yourself kind of clawing at the door to get into. And I when I found out what it was like, in the very first job I was on a film set, I mean, I was lost in space, and all of those aspirations and dreams is all BS, right? Hey, Matt, buddy, pick up this cable. Come on, get over here. Where's my coffee? The first time I was on a crew, I was a very, very entry-level camera assistant. It's called a camera trainee. He was essentially the grunt that everyone in the camera department kicks around. And there was a focus puller. And the very first time he spoke to me, he said, go to the truck and make me a cappuccino. And I thought he was joking. I thought, this is insane. What are you talking about? Make a cappuccino on the truck? And why would you think I would know anything about making cappuccinos? You know what I mean? But this was my job, keeping the boys in coffee. It was insane. Yeah. I thought I didn't go to school to be a coffee jockey, Anyway. but it, you got to pay your dues,
100%. Yeah. I just, I'm still, even in this position where I'm nobody, like I'm still learning the ropes, and
Yeah.
it's always fascinating from where you started to where you are. And Vincent, I had the same question for you before your first time on set, your first set foot on a set. Who were you as a person? Like how did you identify yourself and who you were?
Yeah, well, I mean, as both of you said, always learning the ropes. But the thing about this job is it's all I've ever done. I stepped into a drama class. I grew up in Scotland, in Glasgow, Scotland. That's where I lived until the early 80s. And I stepped into a drama class there in the late 70s and was cast in a television series that was shooting in the country, and that's all I've ever done. It's really
Wow.
the only job I've ever had is working in television, film, and theater.
So when you started that first job, where did you see yourself, say 25 years down the road? Where did you see your future, like far future? Where were you hoping to be?
Yeah, that's kind of you. It's probably 40 years down the road.
Well,
no, longer, 45. But well, I grew up in an artistic family. My family were all in the music business, in the violin game. My mom taught violin and played in the symphony, and my sisters are both music teachers. I played a lot of music as a kid, and I was just always interested in drama and music. And so that was my life. And I think it would be no matter what. I mean, I think if I wasn't acting, part of me wishes I was a musician. I mean, I like to, I play all sorts of stuff to amuse myself, but I'm not a musician. But that's kind of what I would love to do, really.
Understood. And Carl, 26 years ago, you were directing Johnny. Where did you see yourself now?
Well, I mean, just getting to that point to be able to make that movie was this huge battle. It was like a huge uphill climb. And I mean, I still it feels like yesterday, and I still remember that experience, because the battle of that movie set me up to make other movies. But you realize every movie's kind of a battle. You got to start from somewhere. Everyone says no. Nobody thinks it's a good idea or that you can do it, or, there's just so many barriers, and the barriers are always there. And the barriers, they change. There's different kinds of barriers, but I think anyone who doesn't have a stomach for, the adversity, the difficulty, the creativity required just to put a project together. This is even before you roll a frame of film, it's an enormous amount of work. So making Johnny to me was, it was a kind of reaction at the time to being now at this point, I told you my first day on set. Well, that guy who was that camera trainee, I spent a few years climbing those ropes, and then I sort of simultaneously did day calls as a lighting guy and worked my way up the camera departments, trying to get as much understanding of the set. Particularly, I was very interested in camera. I still have a camera in my hands whenever I shoot a movie. Right. Whenever I'm directing a movie, I'm always involved in the cinematography. And so I just felt like, as a guy on this monster set, I worked on a Gus Van Sant movie. I worked with the great DP Fred Elms. He was my boss on a movie. He's the guy who shot Blue Velvet. I mean, these were giants of the industry, and watching them work was incredible. You learned a lot, but I also saw that it was going to be, hell was going to freeze over by the time I got to do what they were going to do. If I was going to stay in this ladder climbing game, I wanted to make my own movies. So how do you do that? And so my initial idea was to find other crew members from big shows and films that I was working on, and there tended to be a sort of disgruntled, lighting guy. This was a common thing. We were talking the 90s, but I would say you'd find these people today. Disgruntled lighting guy who makes really good money, can't stand being bossed around all the time, and really wonders what it would be like to be the boss, And so I tapped into this zeitgeist. I thought, there's enough of these guys. And I got 5 of them together. And the idea was everyone was going to put in $5,000. There was going to be a bunch of these guys that were all putting in $5,000, and we were going to pool our resources. We were all going to be owners and bosses, and I was going to direct this movie. And they were stoked. They were so stoked. But then Christmas was coming. There was a little bit of an industry downturn. These guys lived in big 3-car garage houses in the suburbs, and they had, families, and they were just like, they were nervous about parting with some cash and taking some time out of the game. And it was just like, Carl, I'm really sorry. I know you're a great guy. Just can't do it. I can't do it. Maybe next year. This is the story, right? And so when I went to the cinema and saw the Lars von Trier inspired Thomas Vinterberg film, The Celebration, which was one of the original Dogma movies, which was handheld, unlit, very low tech, very lo-fi, very defying the kind of infrastructure commercial system for filmmaking. When I saw this and I saw how good it was, I thought, you don't need all this crap to make a movie. And so that's kind of been my journey, and I've spent 25 films, so almost 30 years now, making movie after movie after movie. And for a long time, climbing to bigger budgets and more gear and more trucks and more people and more infrastructure. And then about 5 years ago, downturns, the pandemic wasn't great for us. There were strikes, there were issues. And I started to see it like the industry change. It became like a little more like lots of money going to big projects,
right?
But that middle class, that smaller to mid-sized filmmaking that I was doing, I was eroding. And so I sort of went back and have been going back now to a more direct cinema verite, Dogma 95 approach to filmmaking. So when Vince and I started Field Sketches, it was Vince, myself, and then we've got Vince's friends together to put a little acting group, a little ensemble together. And we collaborated and we conversed and we created together. The script changed from our workshops. And then we went out to make the movie with this very small crew because, if we waited around and asked permission from the infrastructure, from the powers that be, the answer was
exactly
no. It's going to be no. And I like that lovely old Francis Ford Coppola line. I'm making a movie, and if you know what's good for you, you'll get in on it, and you'll make it with me. And if you don't, that's your loss. It's too bad for you. And I really think you have to have that kind of brass.
You have to believe in it too.
Yeah.
No, you have to actually just put together the parade and start marching down the street.
Yeah.
People have to see you're going to do it.
People who are going to join you will join you, and that's it.
That's this show. We just have to do it. It sounds incredibly stupid. I'm going to do a talk show, and I'm going to talk to famous people, and I'm going to be on the internet. People are like, so what? Everybody does that, and then you just have to do it and show that you can do it and continue and respect the people that are there and get the respect back and do something of quality. I think once you start doing it, it gets there. The problem is nobody gets started doing it. So that's why you guys doing this hasn't been impressive. But one thing I was looking at, you guys have worked together before. How did you guys first meet before we even get Field Sketches?
Vince and I have been crossing in the world circles and paths for our whole lives, just by virtue of his father-in-law and his wife's family. They were very significant track and field elite athletes in their day, and also became coaches of the Canadian team. And when I was young, I was on the Canadian national cross-country team, went to the World Championships in the mid-1980s. That's how old I am. And these people were my coaches. You know, they were the mentors. And my brother, who's an architect, who we kind of lovingly mock in our movie Field Sketches, is an architect and a designer, and he did a restaurant fit for Vince's wife. And we've had these people in common our whole lives. And then Vince comes along as a wonderful stage actor. Originally, that's how I knew Vince, was watching him on stage. We've done a bunch of films together because when you need great actors, you have this group of like-minded people in your world that you call. And Vince has been generous with his time and his effort and his energy with me. And and now you can see by looking at us, when I want to cast someone who is a sort of slightly more artistic.
So right after your leave, I love it. Yeah.
I go, I'm gonna get Vince to play this guy. Then it'll be really personal.
Have a great one. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Be safe out there. Treat each other well.